We love recognition, but we suck at it. Whether we want to admit it or not, recognition plays a huge role in our day-to-day lives, in our happiness, in our well-being, both at work and in our personal relationships. But the problem? We're horrible at it. We're horrible about giving it. We suck at receiving it, myself included. And the problem is, most of us don't even know it. I had a rule for a year that no matter whoever I sat next to on a plane or on the subway, even if they had earphones on or they were asleep, I had to get their attention and I had to interview them. And my first question was always, what makes a good acknowledgement or compliment by a boss or supervisor? Once they realized I wasn't hitting on them, trying to sell them something or get them to join a cult, then they would open up and they would tell story after story of the boss who never recognized them, the parent whose approval they wanted to gain, or the teacher who made a profound difference in their life. 365 of these interviews later, I've come to understand one thing for sure. We're crazy. We are. And our relationship to recognition is confusing and doesn't make much sense. For example, I interviewed my landlord when I lived in Boston. I said, Kathy, what's your relationship to recognition? Oh, I love recognition, but it makes me so uncomfortable. Kathy explained, I was at my retirement party. Kathy worked at this organization for over 2 decades. All of my colleagues were telling stories and thanking me. I loved it, but I was so embarrassed. What I saw with Kathy is what I saw in nearly all my interviews, that the majority of us have this often multi-sided, conflicting relationship to recognition. I love it, but I get so embarrassed. It motivates me, but I worry I won't be able to produce the same result in the future. Or I don't like recognition, or I don't need recognition. But after asking a few questions, it always turns to, I'm not comfortable with recognition, or I'm not supposed to need recognition. So I don't know about you, but I always thought that recognition was supposed to be something positive, right? Right? So that's what doesn't make sense. That's why we're crazy. Why, if this is supposed to be something positive, do we all have these conflicting relationships to it? So right after Kathy said, it makes me embarrassed, I immediately asked why. Without skipping a beat. 4th grade, school. In the middle of class, my teacher goes, Kathy, stand up. So Kathy slowly stands up. Now everybody look at Kathy. Now that is a perfect uniform. All of your uniforms should look just like Kathy's. Awkward! We all have these past experiences or associations with recognition. And it's these past experiences or associations that dictate how we experience recognition right now. Now, I'm not a psychiatrist. And I'm not going to go all Freud and talk about our childhood traumas and what happened to you in 5th grade and what your mom said to you, and we're not going to talk about you. We're not going to talk about all our childhood traumas. But what I do want to talk about are some of the things that we do to ourselves and to others that keep these conflicting associations in place, limiting our ability to effectively give and receive recognition, and limiting our ability to actually get present to our own accomplishments. If we go back to Kathy's example, can you see what Kathy's teacher did was not actually recognize her? Okay, maybe her uniform was spotless. It was perfect. But she wasn't actually recognizing Kathy. She was using Kathy to teach the other kids in class a lesson. That's not recognition, That's manipulation. I told you that my first question when I was doing interviews, my first question was always, what makes a good acknowledgement by a boss or supervisor? 9 times out of 10, people didn't tell me what made a good acknowledgement, but instead, what made a bad one. And I was able to establish several ineffective practices that actually break down trust and actually hurt our relationships and our connection with others. And I want to start today by sharing 3 of them with you. Number 1, I hate it when my boss gives me compliments right before they ask for something. Joe, Habibi, you were an all-star last week in that sales meeting. All-star. Can you get me this report by 5? How many people have a boss or a friend who does that? Yeah, by the way, this is being recorded. Okay, now here's the real question. How many of you do this? Less hands, less hands. You're all liars. Because you do this too. Mom, you're so pretty. I love you. Can I have $5? We all do this. Number 2, and by the way, my mother's watching this, so Mom, that wasn't about you. Okay. Number 2, I hate it when my boss sandwiches feedback or criticism between 2 compliments. Also known as sandwiching, less eloquently known, excuse my language, as the shit sandwich. George, Rana, you are such an asset to our team. But if you make a mistake like you did last week again, we're gonna have to let you go. But we're really glad you're here, really, really, right? Or you're a really great guy, but I just want to be friends. Hug? Any compliment followed by a but is not actually a compliment. The problem, we've actually been trained to do this. This is a standard feedback model. You go to any business school, you're going to get taught this. When you give feedback, you just put it between the 2 sandwiches. And it's not always wrong if we actually mean the compliments on either end. But most of the time, we don't. We're using those to make ourselves feel more comfortable. Okay, number 3. This is what we do when other people are getting recognized and we're not. Imagine yourself at a staff meeting, at a family retreat, and that other guy or girl are getting recognized and you're not. If we like them, we're happy for them. Jealous, but happy for them. But if not, we are nasty. Jerk. Kiss ass. You guys have seen him. He doesn't really do any work, does he? Yeah. Now here's the question. When you're getting publicly recognized, what are you worrying people are thinking about you? Similar? Usually it is. Before you judge, give people the benefit of the doubt. Plus, I think it's time to give up the idea that someone else's success is our failure. Because that's just made up. Now, when we do these ineffective practices, we worry people are going to do them with us. And if you want to stop worrying about them, you got to stop doing them. So this is what we do to others. What I want to talk about now is one of the things we do to ourselves. So you know when you start a new project at work, or you set a new goal for yourself, you get this idea in your mind what that end result is going to look like. I'm going to organize an event and 1,000 people or 1,200 people are going to come. Right? Go TEDx. Okay. And it's going to be extraordinary. And then you produce a result. And say 800 people show up. And people are coming up to you and saying, thank you, that was such a cool event, that was amazing. But we don't hear it because what are we focused on? We're focused on the gap. The gap between what we actually produced and what we had in our mind that we were going to produce. And then when people are coming up to us, they're actually recognizing us for this result. That's what they're experiencing. But that little voice inside her head blocks out all those compliments, and it focuses on, yeah, well, 200 people didn't show up. And you didn't do that, and you didn't do that, and you didn't do that. Yeah, thanks for the compliment. Yep, but I didn't do that, and I didn't do that. See, it's really important to focus on the gap, to pay attention to the gap. That's where we learn and that's where we develop. But if we only focus on the gap, that's how we go crazy. And that's how we burn ourselves out and the people around us out. So what's important is before you look at this, stop and look here. Look at what you did accomplish and all the things and the ups and downs you went through to produce this result. Because that's what gets us present to our motivation, and that's what gets us present to the passion that helps us overcome the gap the next time. Okay? So, this is what we do to ourselves and others. And because we've been trained to focus on the gap our whole life and not hearing what people are saying, or because of these ineffective practices that people are using, and also because of these past associations, the craziness, I've found that we've actually established this sort of conditioned response to recognition. Like Pavlov's dogs, when the bell would ring and they would salivate, someone gives us a compliment and it was nothing. It was nothing, I swear. Or, wow. Or, it was a team effort. And maybe it was a team effort. But, here's my but, okay? Maybe it was a team effort, but that's not accepting the compliment. We quickly divert the recognition away. We also make jokes, or we play compliment ping pong. I love your dress, I love your shoes. And sometimes it's even culturally institutionalized. Someone told me recently that in certain parts of China, it's actually considered impolite to accept a compliment. And also we find it in language. In French, I say merci, and you respond with? Yes, direct translation, it's nothing. Diversion. Okay, you see it in Spanish as well. But there's an impact when we divert recognition. What most people don't realize is that a compliment is oftentimes more about the giver than it is about the receiver. And when someone offers us a compliment, it's like they're offering us a gift. And when we divert it, it's like we're taking that gift and throwing it back in their face. So even if you don't like it, even if you don't agree with it, just say thank you. And if it made a difference, let them know. My friend Carol told me a story. She said, when I was in 4th grade, and by the way, I don't know why everything seems to happen in 4th grade, but it does. We should look at that. Marge, you can talk about that one, okay? Tell me what happens in 4th grade. But she said, when I was in 4th grade, right before going on maternity leave, my teacher, Mrs. McCahill, came up to me and she says, Carol, you know you're a really great student. You know you're going to be okay. You're going to do great things. Carol said, I don't know what it was about what she said, but I went from being shy and reserved to taking on sports, taking on AP classes, and just going for it. And she goes, that compliment made such a huge difference in my life, I never got to thank her for it. So I said, great, when are you going to thank her? She goes, I'm 44. That was 35 years ago. I don't even know if she's still alive. That Friday, Carol was able to have an email forwarded through the school department to Mrs. McCahill. And within hours, she had a response. Carol, I worked at a lot of different schools, but I think I remember you. I think you were in one of my 4th grade classes. How are you? Carol immediately responded and told Mrs. McCahill about the difference she had made in her life. And Mrs. McCahill wrote her right back. Carol, you know, I grew up in a poor family and I never thought I could go to college. But my guidance counselor, Mr. Tingman, told me I could. And I did, and I became a teacher. And I never got to thank him for that. I know he's passed away now, but I know where his kids are, so I'm going to go thank them. There is a huge power in acknowledgement, recognition, and praise. But because we're often uncomfortable with it, we avoid it. And when we avoid it, we rob ourselves and others of the benefit that it brings. And we need to get better at it. We need to rethink our relationship to recognition. We can start by looking at our own experience of it, our own relationship to recognition, and being aware of these ineffective practices that I shared with you today, and work on phasing them out of our daily use. We can also make sure that recognition doesn't just happen once a year in our performance review or on our birthdays. That doesn't work. No one should go one day at work feeling like that what they do doesn't matter. And we do this by creating opportunities for recognition in our staff meetings, in our daily conversations with friends and family. And by the way, this is not just when you're happy and inspired with the people you like to. With the people you're frustrated with, on the days when you're pissed off, you're angry, and you don't want to go to work, that's the day to do it, because that's when it makes the biggest difference. And I want to leave you today with one thing you can do on the break here at TEDx or when you're watching this. Go out and ask one person, what do you want to be acknowledged for? Or what are you proud of? And then, and by the way, they're not going to hear it, they're going to divert the question, they're going to think you're weird and all that stuff. But ask them anyway, and insist, no, seriously, what do you want to be acknowledged for? And then listen. And then ask them questions about what it took for them to do what they did. Because we usually don't want to be acknowledged for the result. Usually we want to be acknowledged for all the ups and downs, the challenges and barriers that we went through to overcome that result. Afterwards, just thank them and acknowledge them for what they shared, and please, let me know how it goes. Thank you.